My name is Emily Carter. I am 34 years old. The call came just before midnight. Not from a friend, not from a coworker, but from my mother. Her voice came through the moment I answered. Tomorrow, when you come to your sister's engagement party, just sit quietly. Don't tell anyone about your job. No greeting. No goodnight. Just a warning. Emily sat quietly in her small apartment, watching the lights of Denver glow through the window. It was not the first time she had heard words like that. In the Carter family, Emily had always been the one who needed to be managed, the one who needed reminders, the one who was kept out of important conversations. Meanwhile, her younger sister Rachel had always been the pride of the family. Rachel was about to marry Ethan Monroe, the son of a wealthy and respected family in the area. For months, every family conversation had revolved around that wedding. The wedding dress, the lakeside resort, the guest list, the plans for the future. Emily was always there during those family dinners, yet she was almost invisible. No one asked where she had just returned from. No one asked what she had been through. No one seemed curious about the career she had devoted nearly 10 years of her life to. To her mother, it was simply an unstable job. A strange choice. A path that offered no social status to show off to relatives. Emily had grown used to it a long time ago. She learned how to stay quiet. Not because she was weak, but because explaining herself to people who had no interest in listening felt pointless. The following evening, the lakeside resort glowed under warm golden lights. Guests arrived dressed in elegant clothing. Soft music drifted through the spacious venue. Rachel appeared in a graceful cream-colored dress. People surrounded her constantly, offering congratulations. Patricia Carter could barely hide her pride. She introduced Rachel to every important guest in attendance. Each introduction seemed to make her smile even brighter. When Emily entered the ballroom, her mother barely glanced at her. Then she pulled her aside. She adjusted Emily's collar and lowered her voice. "There are a lot of important people here tonight. Don't make things difficult for me." Emily simply nodded. She didn't argue. She no longer had the energy to argue. The evening unfolded exactly as she expected. People asked Rachel about her future plans. They asked Ethan about his business. They asked both families about the upcoming wedding. Meanwhile, Emily sat alone at a table near the window, quietly observing everything around her. Occasionally, a few relatives stopped by to exchange polite greetings, but none of them stayed long enough to have a real conversation. When the speeches began, Ethan's father stepped onto the stage. He raised a glass to celebrate the union of the two families. The entire room listened attentively. Patricia smiled with satisfaction. This was the evening she had always imagined. Everything was perfect, at least until the large doors at the back of the ballroom opened. A silver-haired man walked in, tall, calm, carrying a presence that naturally drew every eye in the room. It was Richard Lawson, the founder of one of the largest humanitarian aid organizations in the United States. His unexpected arrival left many guests stunned. Even Ethan's father immediately stepped down from the stage to greet him. But then something happened that no one could have anticipated. Richard Lawson barely acknowledged anyone. His eyes swept across the room, then stopped. At a table near the window, where Emily was sitting, he froze for a few seconds. Surprise was written clearly across his face, then he began walking quickly toward her. The conversations throughout the ballroom gradually faded. One by one, people turned to watch. Patricia felt her heart begin to race. Rachel stopped smiling. Ethan frowned in confusion. No one understood what was happening. Richard stopped directly in front of Emily. He stared at her for a long moment, as if he had just found someone he never expected to see there. Then he spoke. His voice was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Emily Carter, what are you doing here?" The entire room fell silent. The entire room fell silent. Emily slowly rose from her chair. There was no surprise on her face, only a trace of resignation. Like someone who had just realized that a secret she had protected for years was no longer hers to keep. Richard Lawson let out a soft laugh. Then he extended his hand. Emily shook it. A simple gesture. Yet it was enough to make people around them exchange confused glances. Ethan's father stepped forward. He offered a polite smile. "Do the two of you know each other?" Richard turned toward him. His eyes still had not left Emily. "Know each other? I think that word is far too small. Without Emily Carter, thousands of people would not have survived the earthquake in Morocco 3 years ago." The air in the room seemed to freeze. Rachel blinked. Patricia frowned slightly. Several guests began looking at Emily in a completely different way. Richard continued, I still remember the first day I met her. Every communication system had collapsed. Supply routes were cut off. Dozens of rescue teams couldn't reach the disaster zone. Everyone believed the mission was going to fail. But Emily was the one who found a solution. Emily was the one who coordinated the entire operation during the most critical hours. He paused. His voice grew quieter. A lot of people are still alive today because of the decisions she made. No one spoke. At some point, even the music in the ballroom had stopped. Patricia stared at her daughter. Confusion filled her eyes. As though she were looking at a stranger, Rachel turned toward Emily. You've never told me any of that. Emily smiled faintly. Did anyone ever ask? The answer was simple, but it left Rachel speechless. Richard continued. He spoke about conflict zones, refugee camps, emergency flights in the middle of the night. Moments when Emily had only minutes to make decisions that affected hundreds of lives. With every story he shared, with every detail he revealed, the room grew quieter, because everyone was beginning to understand an uncomfortable truth. The woman they had always viewed as unsuccessful had actually been living a life that most of them would never have had the courage to face. Then Richard revealed something else. Actually, last year I offered Emily the position of Regional Executive Director for the Western Division. A wave of surprise swept through the room. It was the kind of position hundreds of people dreamed about. Richard shook his head. But she turned it down. This time even Emily lowered her eyes. She already knew what he was about to say. Richard looked toward the man standing near the end of the banquet table. Her father had just gone through heart surgery. Emily chose to stay in Colorado to take care of him. The entire ballroom fell silent. Her father froze. Memories began rushing back. The drives to the hospital. The early mornings. The follow-up appointments. The medical bills that had somehow been paid without him ever knowing who paid them. He had always assumed everything simply worked itself out. He had never asked. And now he understood why. Rachel raised a hand to her mouth. Tears began to form in her eyes. Patricia remained motionless. The color slowly drained from her face. For years, she had believed Rachel was the one who sacrificed the most for the family. She had told everyone that story, again and again. But the truth was now standing right in front of her. A truth she had never wanted to see. Richard turned toward her. His voice remained calm. There was no accusation in it, yet every word landed with tremendous weight. I have met many successful people, many talented people, but not everyone is willing to walk away from the greatest opportunity of their career to stay beside their family. He paused for a few seconds, then looked directly at Patricia. You have an extraordinary daughter, and I sincerely hope you know that. No one said a word. Patricia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time in years, the woman who always had an answer for everything had no words left at all, and Emily simply stood there, calm, because she understood something important. What had just changed was not merely the way people saw her, it was the entire story this family had believed for years, and this was only the beginning. After Richard Lawson stepped away from the stage, the atmosphere in the ballroom was no longer the same. The party continued. The music started playing again. Guests continued moving from table to table, but something had changed. Completely changed. The people who had once looked right through Emily as if she were invisible were now constantly finding reasons to talk to her. Some wanted to hear more about her overseas assignments. Others wanted to know which countries she had worked in. A few even asked to take photos with her. Emily responded politely, but she felt no satisfaction, no sense of victory, only sadness. Because all of that attention had appeared only after people discovered who she was, not when she was simply Emily. On the other side of the ballroom, Rachel remained seated for a long time. She looked at her sister differently now, no longer with the familiar gaze of the daughter who had always been favored, but with the expression of someone who had just realized she had missed something deeply important. Eventually, Rachel walked over. She sat beside Emily. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then she quietly asked, "Did you really live a life like that?" Emily let out a soft laugh. Not every life looks the way people present it on social media. Rachel lowered her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt ashamed. Not because of what she had done, but because of what she had never done. She had never asked whether her sister was happy. She had never asked what challenges Emily was facing. She had never realized that Emily's silence was not because she had nothing to say, It was because nobody wanted to listen. Rachel reached for her sister's hand. Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry." Emily gently squeezed her hand. There was no blame. No resentment. Some wounds do not need another accusation. They only need to be seen. A few minutes later, their father approached. The quiet man stood in front of his daughter for a long moment, as though searching for words he had owed her for years. Finally, he spoke. "I was wrong." Emily looked up at him. He took a deep breath. "I saw what was happening. I knew you were treated differently. I knew there were times when people overlooked you, but I chose to stay silent. And that is the thing I regret most." Emily could hear the tremble in his voice. For the first time in many years, her father truly saw her, not as a daughter who needed to be fixed, but as a complete person. Yet the hardest conversation was still waiting. Patricia Carter appeared as the party was nearing its end. The woman who had always been strong and in control now looked exhausted. She looked at her daughter. Her eyes carried emotions she could not even name herself. Maybe regret. Maybe loss. Maybe both. "I only wanted to protect the family." She spoke softly. Emily remained silent. Patricia continued. "I thought you didn't need recognition. You were always strong. You always took care of yourself." Emily looked at her mother for a long moment. Then she answered gently. "That's exactly what you've never understood." Patricia froze. Emily gave her a sad smile. "I never needed people to admire me. I never needed to be seen as someone special. I only wanted to be treated like a daughter in this family." It was a simple sentence. Yet Patricia had no response. Because for the first time, she realized something painful. What Emily had been missing all these years was not respect from strangers. It was unconditional love from her own family. When the party finally ended, Emily walked out of the resort. A cool breeze drifted across the lake. The lights behind her still glowed brightly. Laughter and conversation still echoed through the night. But she did not look back. Not because she was angry. Not because she wanted to leave anyone behind. But because for the first time in many years, she no longer felt the need to prove anything. Some people spend their entire lives searching for recognition from others. Emily had finally found something far more valuable. The peace that comes from knowing her own worth. If this story made you stop and think, share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt underestimated by the people you loved most? We would love to hear your story. And if you enjoy stories about family, hidden truths, and overcoming difficult circumstances, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story. If Emily's journey resonated with you, remember this: not every act of courage is visible, and not every sacrifice receives recognition. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones quietly carrying burdens that no one else sees. Her story reminds us that true worth is not measured by status, praise, or public attention, but by character, resilience, and the choices we make when nobody is watching. Have you ever felt overlooked or underestimated by the people closest to you? Share your experience in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful stories of family, truth, and personal strength.